Hello students, welcome back to our economics class session 4. As usual, before getting into the session, make sure you have your points book with you so that you can take necessary points and a pencil to follow the diagrams. Put on your headphones for greater concentration. And also, don't forget to make a good revision of our previous sessions so that it will become very easy for you to cope up with this session. It will be very helpful for us to recall the topics what we discussed in the previous classes before getting into this session. In our previous session, we discussed about ordinal utility analysis, then indifference curve analysis, then shape of indifference curve and marginal rate of substitution. If we can recall all these topics in a quick time, we started our session with the meaning of cardinal approach. Cardinal approach is nothing but calculating utility in terms of cardinal numbers like 1, 2, 3 and so on. Then we discussed about ordinal utility approach, where it said that utility cannot be calculated but it can only be compared. The consumer can rank the goods based on his preferences and the level of satisfaction he expects from a particular good or a bundle. Then later on we discussed about indifference curve. We studied the meaning of indifference curve and also we derived the indifference curve with the help of an example and a table. Later on we talked about MRS, which means marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitutions is nothing but how many units of mangoes the consumer is ready to sacrifice in order to get one extra unit of banana so that he can remain on same level of satisfaction. And also remember that MRS is the major reason for the shape of indifference curve. Indifference curve shapes convex to the origin from left to right, downward sloping. The reason behind this is as the consumer sacrifices more and more mangoes, he gains an extra unit of banana. But according to the law of diminishing marginal rate of substitution, he sacrifices lesser and lesser units of mangoes for every extra unit of bananas. The reason behind is that the marginal utility for each extra unit of banana decreases. As a result of that, the consumer sacrifices lesser and lesser units of mangoes, so it makes the indifference curve take the shape of convex shaped curve. Keeping these things in mind, we will continue our analysis about indifference curve, further discussing these topics in this session. In this particular session, we are going to discuss about monotonic preferences, indifference map, and a very important topic, features of indifference curve. To start with, can you remember that in the beginning of this chapter, we learnt that a rational consumer always chooses a commodity or a bundle which offers him an highest level of satisfaction. Yes, it's true. It is common that a rational consumer believes that he gets more satisfaction by consuming more of that good. And given the bundles of that good, he always tries to choose the bundle which offers him more quantities of any one of the good at the same time without sacrificing other good. To understand this clearly, suppose there are two bundles A and B. Bundle A consists of 1 unit of banana and 10 units of mangoes. And bundle B consists of 2 units of bananas but same 10 units of mangoes. Being a rational consumer, which bundle you are going to choose? Correct. You are going to choose bundle B since it is giving more of bananas but without sacrificing mangoes. Therefore, preference of a consumer is said to be monotonic when that bundle offers him more of at least one of the good but without sacrificing another good. Just observe this table. Here we have three combinations A, B and C, and each combination is giving 10 units of mangoes. Each combination is giving 10 units of mangoes. But if you observe carefully, the consumer is getting extra unit of bananas every time he is moving from one bundle to another bundle. Here, being rational consumer, which bundle you are going to choose? As I told earlier, a rational consumer always chooses a bundle which offers him highest level of satisfaction, which means the combination which offers him greater quantities of at least one of the good. In this particular example, all the combinations are providing 10 units of mangoes, but the combination C is providing him 3 units of bananas, making him to get more satisfaction from the combination C. So, without doubt, the consumer is going to get the C combination by expecting more level of satisfaction. But here we have to address an important question that while he is moving from one combination to another combination, will the consumer remains on same indifference curve? Because the consumer is moving from one combination to another combination without sacrificing mangoes. He is gaining extra unit of bananas without sacrificing the mangoes. What does indifference curve says? As long as the consumer is ready to stay on same indifference curve, it is possible only when he is ready to sacrifice one good, then only he can gain another good. But in this particular case, you can observe that the consumer is gaining bananas but without sacrificing any units of mangoes. So in this case, do you think the consumer will remain on same indifference curve? The answer is no. Because you know that as long as consumer is staying in the same indifference curve, he must sacrifice one good in order to another good. But as we discussed in the table, you observed that while he was moving from one combination to another combination, he was having 10 units of mangoes, and without sacrificing the mangoes, he was getting extra units of bananas, which makes him to get more satisfaction without sacrificing another good. Because of this reason, it makes him to shift from one indifference curve to another higher indifference curve. You can observe here that the combination A is providing him 10 units of mangoes and 1 unit of bananas, and the consumer was at the indifference curve 1. But while he was moving from A to B, he was getting 10 units of mangoes, but without sacrificing any units of mangoes, he earned 1 extra unit of banana. As a result of that, his satisfaction increased, making him to move from the lower indifference curve IC1 to the higher indifference curve IC2. In the same way, the consumer is moved from B to C. The mangoes quantity never changed, but he gained 1 more extra unit of bananas, which means more of the bananas, more of the satisfaction. So it makes the consumer to shift from the lower indifference curve IC2 to the higher indifference curve IC3. So observe the diagram carefully. In all the 3 bundles, he is gaining 10 units of mangoes only. But from one bundle to another bundle, he is gaining more of bananas. So he is getting highest level of satisfaction from higher indifference curve, which is IC3 in this diagram. Then what do you mean by monotonic preference? It says that as consumer always prefers a bundle which has more of at least one of the good and no less of other good compared to previous bundle. So preferences of these kinds are called as monotonic preferences. A consumer's likes and preferences over a bundle keeps on changing based on the level of satisfaction he derives from it. It's because of whenever he is getting more level of satisfaction, it's quite obvious that he moves to that bundle which is offering him highest level of satisfaction. So, if we can represent all the consumers' preferences over all the bundles through indifference map, so we can represent these different preferences of the consumer in a single diagram. So when we do that, we call it as indifference map. In a simple meaning, indifference map is nothing but a family or a group of indifference curves which gives him different level of satisfaction. Here one important difference we have to make out between indifference curve and indifference map. Indifference curve said that it's a combination of 2 goods in which the consumer gets equal level of satisfaction. But whereas under the indifference map, the consumer gets different level of satisfaction. Why it is like that? The answer is very simple. While he is moving from one indifference curve to another indifference curve, he will be gaining at least one of the good more, which makes him to get higher level of satisfaction. So each and every indifference curve provides different level of satisfaction, but whereas all the combinations which lies on same indifference curve gives same level of satisfaction. It is true that a rational consumer chooses higher indifference curve which offers him more satisfaction. So, the monotonic preferences always lies between two indifference curves. Coming to the last topic of this session, that is features of indifference curve. The features of indifference curves are follows like this. Indifference curve slopes downwards from left to right. It means that in order to have more of one good, the consumer has to sacrifice another good. In our example, we took the example of bananas and mangoes. We came to know that if the consumer has to gain one extra unit of banana, he has to sacrifice some units of mangoes. That sacrificing, it showed in terms of delta, that is change in good 1 or change in good 2. So whenever the consumer is sacrificing one good and he is gaining another good, so he can stay on same indifference curve. If the consumer does not sacrifice mangoes and at the same time he gains an extra unit of banana, it means that he is getting higher level of satisfaction and takes him to higher indifference curve. Therefore, as long as the consumer wants to stay in same indifference curve, he can gain more bananas only by sacrificing mangoes. And it is possible only when the indifference curve is left to right, downward sloping, convex shaped curve. The next feature of indifference curve, it says that higher indifference curve gives greater level of satisfaction. We have already discussed this under monotonic preferences. Yes, it is true that whenever the consumer is moving from one indifference curve to another indifference curve, his satisfaction level increases. As long as marginal utility of a good is positive, an individual always prefer more of that good. If you can observe in this table, the consumer is ready to gain more and more bananas only when the marginal utility of these bananas remains positive. As he is earning more of that commodity without sacrificing another, his satisfaction level increases. See here, he is not at all sacrificing the quantities of mangoes, but he is gaining the quantities of bananas, which makes him to get more level of satisfaction. So in this table, the bundle A is giving 10 units of mangoes and 1 unit of banana, followed by bundle B 10 units of mangoes, 2 units of bananas, and C 10 units of mangoes, 3 units of bananas. It's clear that the bundle B is giving more satisfaction than bundle A, and the bundle C is giving more satisfaction than bundle B and bundle A. At the same time, look at the diagram. While he is moving from bundle A to bundle B, he is shifting from the lower indifference curve IC1 to IC2. Since the combination C offers him the highest level of satisfaction and it also lies on higher indifference curve, that is IC3, we can say that the higher indifference curve offers higher level of satisfaction for the consumer. So here combination C is providing him highest level of satisfaction, which is lying on the higher indifference curve IC3. And the last features of indifference curve: two indifference curves never intersects each other. What happens if two indifference curves intersects each other? It leads to conflicting results. To understand, let us allow two indifference curves to intersect. You observe the diagram that both A and B combinations gives same level of satisfaction as they lie on the same indifference curve IC1. But on the other hand, both A and C combinations also gives same satisfaction, but they lies on IC2. So they are giving same level of satisfaction. So since A and B lies on same indifference curve and A and C lies on same indifference curve, we can conclude that B and C combinations both gives same level of satisfaction. But if you think carefully, it's totally against to what we have learnt. If you compare between the combinations B and C, the consumer is getting more units of bananas in combination B. You just observe here that in the combination B, he is getting 9 units of mangoes, 7 units of bananas. In the C combination, he is getting 9 units of mangoes, but 5 units of bananas. Without sacrificing any mangoes, in combination B, he is getting extra units of bananas. So the consumer is better off at the point B than at point C. So the interesting thing here that these intersecting curves showing that this C as well as B combinations giving same level of satisfaction, which is not true. According to this diagram, it's clearly showing that the combination B is giving more level of satisfaction than C. So intersecting indifference curves like this makes both B and C combinations look same. Therefore, two indifference curves should never intersect each other. Okay students, today's session we have started with the new topics of monotonic preferences, which means a rational consumer always chooses the bundle which gives him highest level of satisfaction. We learned the meaning of monotonic preferences, which means the bundles which has more of at least one of the good but no less of other good. Preferences of this kind are called as monotonic preferences. Then we discussed about the indifference map. Indifference map is nothing but the family or a group of indifference curves which gives different level of satisfaction. It's very important point to be remembered that indifference curve gives same level of satisfaction, whereas indifference map gives different level of satisfaction. And we discussed about the features of indifference curves, like an indifference curve should slopes downward from left to right. The reason behind that is, if the consumer wants to gain one good, it is possible only when he is ready to sacrifice another good. So it makes the indifference curve to slope downwards from left to right. Then higher the indifference curve gives greater level of satisfaction. It's true that whenever he is moving from lower indifference curve to higher indifference curve, he will be getting more and more quantities of at least one of the good, which makes the consumer get highest level of satisfaction. And lastly, we discussed about two indifference curve should never intersect each other. If it is so, it will lead to conflicting results. Don't forget to practice these questions. What is monotonic preference? What do you mean by monotonic preference? It means if a consumer is getting more of at least one of the good without sacrificing any quantities of another good, so the consumer is going to choose that bundle. The preferences of this kind are called as monotonic preferences. Then define indifference map. So what do you mean by indifference map? It's a family of indifference curves which gives different level of satisfaction. Next, why does an indifference curve slopes downwards? It's very simple, because as long as the consumer is ready to stay at same indifference curve, he has to sacrifice one of the good to gain another unit of other good. One more, explain indifference map with the help of diagram. So we have discussed about the diagram, and explanation of the diagram has been included in this session. And last but not the least, explain the features of indifference curves with the help of diagrams. We have discussed three important features. One, the indifference curve slopes downwards from left to right. Two, higher the indifference curve offers greater the level of satisfaction. And three, two indifference curve should never intersect each other. Okay students, study well. Thank you.